Hey guys, I'm always on the lookout for stuff that'll scare the crap out of myself and my listeners. This week I think I achieved that a little better than I have previously, but I'm sure you'll all let me know. Enjoy. Number 1. Years ago, my grandfather was dying of complications from Alzheimer's. My little sister gave him a white stuffed bear with a pink heart on the stomach while he was in his deathbed. When you squeezed the bear, it said, "I love you," in a pre-recorded voice. He would constantly squeeze the bear, and the voice made him smile. My grandpop had the bear in his bed until he passed away. Several days before he died, my mother made him promise that he would somehow let us know that he made it to the other side. After he died, we placed the bear on the mantel above the fireplace. The family gathered shortly after his death to remember him. Just as we all sat down in the living room, the bear started speaking on its own. "I love you. I love you. I love you." Number 2. My friend's father is a forest ranger who also happens to be a competitive pistol shooter, like who can hit the most targets the fastest, that sort of thing. So he is driving with his wife, and they're playing car poker with a local car club. Basically, the group comes up with objectives, generally places to drive to, and you are awarded a card for accomplishing them. The goal, of course, is to get the best hand. All of these objectives are completed over a weekend and are done individually. That is, the drivers go their own way. This is not a caravan. So he and his wife are driving their convertible, I think it was a Triumph, along the back roads of western Washington. They come around a bend in the road, and a large pickup truck dragging a good-sized log comes tearing out perpendicular to the road, so that the log is now blocking their path. Putting the car in reverse and looking behind him, the husband sees another truck doing the exact same thing, effectively boxing him and his wife in. Now each pickup bed is occupied by 3 or 4 rednecks, one of whom has a shotgun. One of the rednecks, clearly the leader, jumps down from the bed and walks over to the car. It was a nice day, so the windows were already down. The redneck leader leans into the car and leers at the man's wife. "That is a fine-looking woman you got there." The husband's pulse races. Being a competitive shooter and a forest ranger, technically a peace officer, the husband carries a pistol under the seat of his car, and while the leader of the redneck bandit had walked up to the car, the husband had slowly reached under his seat and pulled up his revolver, concealing it under his legs. As soon as he heard the leader imply that these men were going to rape his wife, he grabbed the leader by the collar and put the pistol to his forehead. "You will have your guys move that log in front of us, or I will blow your fucking head off." The leader was silent for a moment, the calculations running in his head. He said, "You can't get all of us." To which he replied, "Sure, but you will be dead." Self-preservation ruling the day for the leader, he motioned for the front log to be moved. The husband drove forward slowly, keeping hold of the leader's collar until he was clear of the obstacle. he made it past and got the fuck out of there. Number 3. I married my college sweetheart right after we graduated. After about a year, it wasn't going well, and it seemed like it would be best for me to move out. My brother, who was a few years older than me, lived on the other side of town, where he had a fairly large house. He was actually planning to move to another city and staying there in rented accommodation most of the time. He agreed that I could stay in the house until I got myself together or until he sold the house, whichever came first. His house was actually kind of run down. He had been in the process of fixing it up, but he was so busy with his job that he never really got that much done. I had plenty of time on my hands on evenings and weekends, so I volunteered to do some fixing and decorating for him. Over a period of a few months, I repainted all the rooms, fixed all the wooden floors. I even retiled both the bathrooms, put in a new toilet, shower, etc. My brother paid for all the materials, but I did all the labor for free, of course. The last room that I was doing was a bedroom. It had a sort of built-in wardrobe cupboard built into the wall. I decided to paint the inside of the cupboard as well, since the cupboard was a dirty yellow with lots of black marks on the walls. I used the last of the white paint to paint the inside and left the doors open for it to dry. That was my Friday night. Then I went to bed. Next day was a Saturday, and the last thing to do is paint the walls of the room, which included a dark red lower half and a cream upper half. There was a rail between them, and it didn't look as horrible as it sounds. I went to get the red paint from the corridor, or I had been using it to touch up a spot that I had missed. I then went back to the corridor to get the red paint tray with the roller and brush in it. I tripped as I entered the room, and the tray and roller fell on the floor. The floor was covered, but the brush went into the cupboard and hit the wall, leaving a mark that looked like an elongated S with a long line going straight down underneath it. Now I was pissed, because I would have to repaint the inside of the cupboard, at least a couple of coats to cover the dark red, which means I will have to go out and buy more white paint. I picked up the brush, and I started to write shit, using the elongated S for the initial letter. The H, however, came out looking more like an A, so instead I wrote Satan. There was still a long line of paint running vertically under the S, so I made that into the vertical stroke of a K and wrote kill. I thought nothing of it, and then got on with painting the rest of the room. I spent several hours painting the entire room, and by the time I was finished, it was dark and late. I was aching and hungry. I decided to go downstairs to get some food and then go to sleep. As I was leaving the room, Satan Kill caught my eye, and for some reason, I decided to write in orders you to after Satan, making the message say, Satan orders you to kill. It didn't seem important, as I was planning on painting over it anyway. First thing Sunday morning, I went out and bought a tub of white paint. When I got back, I paint over Satan orders you to kill, but I can still read it through the white paint. I then started on the second coat. When I finished the room, I redid white roller over Satan orders you to kill in the cupboard again, but you could still read it. For the next week, every morning before I left for work, I'd get back from work, and in the evening I rollered over another layer of it. I was convinced that you could still read it through the paint. The next weekend, my brother came over, and I showed him the cupboard and asked him if he could see anything through the paint. He said that he couldn't. I was still convinced that it was faintly visible. I told myself that it must be my mind playing tricks on me, and that I needed to take his word for it. Nevertheless, just to be sure, I did add a few more layers of paint over the next few days. During this time, there are periodically people who would come with the realtor to look at the house. My brother was, after all, trying to sell it. I do particularly remember one family, mother, father, teenage boy, who spent ages looking over the house one Saturday. And this may or may not be the same family that reappears later in this story. Soon after, I moved out and moved away to another town, got a new job, rented my own place, and my brother eventually sold the house. I met a new girl, etc. At Christmas, my brother invited me and my girl over to his large apartment. When we went to visit, we were talking, and he tells me that he is so glad that he got rid of that house, since it always gave him the creeps. He then proceeds to ask me if I ever felt creeped out there. And I didn't. But here's the killer revelation. The family who bought the house, the teenage son killed his parents and hid their bodies in a cupboard. Number 4. When I was growing up, I lived in a rural Alabama, about 30 miles north of a place called Mount Pinson. There wasn't really anything around, just houses. Nothing like a neighborhood in the traditional sense. No stores, nothing. We had one police officer, and he was pretty friendly. He was my best friend's uncle. He would often let us ride around with him because nothing really ever happened. There wasn't a recorded murder or anything beyond someone being drunk and a public nuisance. He didn't even arrest people for that. He just took them home. Well, we had this lady who was all alone. Her husband had died a few years earlier, and she was lonely. She called this cop over everything. If some kids were in her yard playing, she'd call the cops, saying she was being harassed. She did it because she was lonely and wanted company. No one could figure out why she just wasn't nicer to the kids or anyone around the neighborhood. One day, there was a new kid kicking around near this little spot we like to hang out. It had a nice climbing tree and a rope swing. There wasn't any grass, just dirt. It was fun to kick the dirt up and stir it up and get all dirty. Me and my friend, being interested in this kid, introduced ourselves. He told us stories of living in a big city and how much fun it was. We were mesmerized at the time. He taught us some new games to play, and we all had fun together. But his father was a real prick. It turned out this kid was the mean old lady's grandson, and his father had lost his job and went back to stay with his mother while he recuperated and stuff. Since the kid was around, she had warmed up to us a little and would invite us over for snacks and stuff. We obliged, being kids. We were always down for some free treats. One day, the new kid never showed up to our little spot. So we figured he was busy with his grandma or doing something else. A couple of days went by, and my friend told his uncle about it. His uncle said he'd take a look. He let us tag along because he never imagined anything weird would be happening. It took about 10 minutes to make it up the windy dirt road to her house. When we finally got up there, he instructed us to stay by the car. We oblige him. He knocks. No answer. The car is there. He knocked again, this time louder. He then circled around to look in the back. My friend and I decided to try knocking. It didn't seem like a bad idea at the time, so we went up to the door and knocked. Nothing. My friend grabbed the doorknob and turned it. I looked at him like, what the hell are you doing? And he pushed the door open. We both almost threw up instantly. The smell was like a physical force that pushed up against us. It was so vile. My friend's uncle made his way around, and when he got to the porch, he took one smell and knew immediately what was wrong. He instructed us to go to the car and wait. He went in and looked around and came bolting back out of the house and threw up. He had tears in his eyes. Not like he was crying, but just he was so upset. He went to his car to contact someone. My friend took off inside, and I went after him. He was curious, and so was I. I felt a little braver following him in. We tiptoed in. The first room was completely clean. We went into the kitchen. The kid was stuffed into the oven, burnt. He had clawed at the glass front of the door and actually scratched it. You could see his hands, his face. It looked like he was still alive, trying to get out. My friend and I just sat there, in complete shock for what seemed like an eternity. It was so surreal. My friend's uncle snapped us back to reality as he came running in the house and grabbed us, screaming and yelling at us to never disobey him again like that. He took us both outside and we just sat there. The entire evening, we didn't say a word, not to each other, not to anyone. My friend's uncle dropped me off, and I never saw my friend again. His uncle said that he couldn't handle it, and he went to live with some family members in the city. My family moved a year later, and I've never been near that house again.
Number 5.
When I was a teenager, I was waiting at an abandoned gas station in downtown Akron to meet a dealer to buy some weed. This was in 93 or 94, so payphones were still functional and in pretty common use. As I was waiting, the payphone in the parking lot started ringing. Bear in mind, it was at about sunset on the outskirts of downtown, and not another single person was around. Out of curiosity, I picked it up. The man on the other line asked, "Is this Chad?" My name isn't Chad, so I said no. The man ignored me and said, "Chad, I want you to do bad things to me." I stated again that I wasn't Chad and asked him what he wanted, if he knew where he was calling, etc. He ignored me again and went into very explicit and specific detail about all the things he wanted Chad to do to him sexually. I was laughing and told him again that I wasn't Chad. Finally, he said he knew for sure I was Chad and described to me what Chad looked like. He described me perfectly, down to the color of my shirt and what type of shoes I was wearing. I immediately hung up and looked around. There was nobody, not one single person around. I got into my car and got the fuck out of there. If you have a scary story you'd like to see featured here, contact me through any of my social media, or you can leave a comment or a message here. See you next time.